The blue lights in the Zephyrian Council chamber flickered as another explosion shook the building. Ambassador Kelvin pressed his long fingers against the control panel, trying to keep his hands steady. Outside the tall windows, the sky burned orange from the ships falling like metal rain. Status report, Kelvin called out to his aide who stood near the communication array. The defense fleet is gone, sir. All of them. The colony worlds have stopped transmitting. We think they are. The aide could not finish the words. Kelvin closed his eyes for a moment. 300 years of peace, 300 years of building art and music and poetry, all of it ending because the Vorthans wanted their star system for its rich mining worlds. The Vorans were known across the galaxy as conquerors. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. Every species knew their black ships with the red symbols painted on the hulls. When the Vorthans came to your world, you either surrendered or died. Sir, we are receiving the final transmission from Colony 7, the aide said, his voice shaking. Kelvin walked to the main screen and watched the last moments of 10 million lives. The Voran ships hung in space like dark birds of death. They fired their weapons until nothing moved on the planet below. No mercy, no prisoners, just silence where families had lived and worked only hours before. How long before they reach us? Kelvin asked. 6 days, maybe 7 if we are lucky. Kelvin looked around the chamber at the faces of his people. The Zephyrians had always been peaceful. They solved problems with words and patience. They had never built weapons of war because they had never needed them. Now their gentle nature would be the reason they died. Send the emergency call, Kelvin said quietly. To who, sir? The Arctilian Federation said they cannot spare ships. The Helios Alliance wants payment up front. The other powers all have their own problems. Send it to everyone. Send it to every species in known space. Someone will help us. Someone has to help us. The aide nodded and began working at the communication panel. The message was simple and desperate. Any species with military ships, please come to Zephyrian space. We are a peaceful people facing extinction. We offer whatever we have in return for your aid. The message went out on all frequencies, traveling through space toward 1,000 different worlds. Most who received it would delete it without reading. Some would read it and feel sorry but do nothing. A few might send sympathy but no ships. Kelvin waited by the window, watching his world prepare to die. Children were being moved to underground shelters. Parents said goodbye without knowing if they would see each other again. Hospitals cleared beds for the wounded who might survive the first attack. Hours passed, then days. A few messages came back, all saying the same thing. Sorry, but we cannot help. Good luck. Try someone else. On the 4th day, when hope had almost died completely, something changed. The communication panel made a different sound, the one that meant an incoming transmission on the emergency frequency. Sir, we have a response, the aide called out, excitement in his voice. For the first time in days, Kelvin rushed to the panel, put it on the main screen. Image was poor quality, filled with static and strange colors. The audio was even worse, crackling and cutting in and out, but the words were clear enough. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. We got your message. Humans coming. Hold position. The message ended. Kelvin stared at the blank screen, not sure what he had just Heard humans? The aide asked. I have. Never heard of this species, Kellen. Quickly accessed the galactic database. The search took several minutes and, when the results came up, his heart sank. The planet called Earth was listed as a Class 12 death world. The description was brief but frightening. Extreme weather patterns, violent seismic activity, dangerous radiation from the local star, gravity that would crush most species, atmosphere that was toxic to civilized life, predators that hunted in packs, diseases that killed without warning, natural disasters that could wipe out entire continents. No intelligent species should be able to survive on such a world, let alone build the technology needed for space travel. Either the database was wrong or these humans were something the galaxy had never seen before. Sir, should we send a reply? The aide asked. Before Kellen could answer, the building shook again. Another bombing run. The Vorthans were getting closer, testing their defenses, learning their weaknesses. Soon they would come in force. Yes, send a reply. Tell them where we are and how many ships the Vorthans have. Tell them they may be our only hope. The message went out, but Kellen wondered if it mattered. Even if these humans were real, even if they were coming, what could one small species do to against the might of the Voran Empire, far away in another part of the galaxy? Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Liberty. Around him his crew worked quickly to prepare for battle. The ship hummed with activity as weapons were loaded and engines were tested. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of fighting. He had been a soldier before he was an officer, and he still thought like one. When someone needed help, you helped them. When someone threatened innocent people, you stopped them. It was that simple. Status report, Jake called out. Defiance and retribution are ready, sir. All ships loaded with supplies and ammunition. The Marine units are aboard and armed, reported his first officer, Commander Alina Davis. Jake nodded. Alina was young but smart, and she understood the risks they were taking. 3 human ships against an entire Vorthon fleet. On paper it looked like suicide, but Jake had learned long ago that wars were not won on paper. They were won by people who refused to give up, who found ways to turn weakness into strength, who fought hardest when things looked hopeless. Any word from Fleet Command? Jake asked. They want us to wait for reinforcements, sir. At least 2 more weeks. Jake looked at the star chart showing Zaire in space. In 2 weeks, there would be no one left to save. Send my reply to command. We are going now. If they want to court-martial me later, I will be happy to explain my decision. Alina smiled. She had served under Jake for 3 years and had never seen him abandon someone who needed help. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We jump in 30 minutes. Destination is Zapier in space. We are going to help some people who are about to die if we do not get there in time. Jake paused, looking around at his crew. Most of them were young. Some had never seen real combat, but they were human, which meant they would fight when fighting was needed. I will not lie to you. The odds are bad. We will be outnumbered and outgunned. The enemy has bigger ships and more experience, but they have never fought humans before. They do not know that we are the species that learned to survive on a world that tried to kill us every single day. They do not know that we fight hardest when we have the most to lose. The crew worked faster there. Movements sharp and focused, Jake could feel the change in the air, the way humans got when they were ready for battle. Remember why we are doing this. Somewhere out there, innocent people are waiting to die. They sent out a call for help, and we are the ones who answered. That makes them our responsibility. We do not abandon our responsibilities. The jump countdown began. 3 human ships prepared to travel through space toward a battle that would change everything in the Zephyrian system. Ambassador Kelvin watched the stars and hoped that help was really coming. Neither side knew that this would be the day the galaxy learned what humans could do when someone needed saving. The space around the Zephyrian home world was quiet, too quiet. Ambassador Kelvin stood in the observation deck of the orbital station, watching for any sign of movement among the stars. 2 days had passed since the message from the humans, 2 days of waiting and hoping. Sir, we have contacts coming out of jump space, called out Lieutenant Thor. Station. Kelvin felt his heart jump. Voran ships. Unknown, sir, the signatures are different. 3 ships medium size. They are not broadcasting Voran identification codes. Through the large window, Kelvin could see 3 points of light growing brighter as they moved closer. The ships were still too far away to see clearly, but something about them looked wrong. They move differently than other spacecraft he had seen. Put me through to them, Kelvin ordered. The communication screen flickered to life, showing static and interference. Then a face appeared and Kelvin had to step backward in surprise. The creature looked almost like a Zephyrian, but shorter and more solid. Where Zahirians were tall and thin with pale blue skin, this being had darker skin and broader shoulders. Most shocking were the eyes. They were small and dark, but they held an intensity that made Kelvin uncomfortable. This is Commander Alina Davis of the Earthship Liberty. We are responding to your distress call. Are you Ambassador Kelvin? Yes, I am. Are you the humans? Alina nodded. We are. Admiral Morrison is preparing our battle plan. We need to know everything about the Voran forces. Numbers, ship types, weapons, tactics. Kelvin quickly sent over all the data they had collected. Alina studied it for several minutes, her face showing no emotion. Finally she looked up. Where are the Vorthans now? 2 days out from our system. They are moving slowly, taking their time. They know we cannot fight them. Good. That gives us time to set up. We are going to position ourselves between your world and the incoming fleet. When they arrive, we will engage them. Kelvin stared at her. Commander, with respect, you have 3 ships. Our intelligence shows the Vorthans have over 50 vessels, including battleships. Alina's expression did not change. We understand the numbers. Then you must see that this is impossible. Your ships will be destroyed. For the first time, Alina smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Ambassador, you do not know humans very well yet. We specialize in impossible things. Transmission ended, leaving Kelvin more confused than before. Were these humans brave or simply crazy? He would find out soon enough. On the Liberty, Admiral Jake Morrison studied the tactical display with his senior officers. The Voran fleet was spread out in a standard attack formation designed to overwhelm any defense through sheer numbers. What do you think, Tony? Jake asked Captain Tony Martinez, commander of the Defiance. Tony was a veteran fighter pilot who had earned his command through courage and Skill, he scratched his chin as he looked at the enemy positions. They are flying like they expect no real resistance, loose formation no. Screening ships, battleships bunched together in the center, they are not taking us seriously because they do not know what we are. Added Captain Ben Rogers from the Retribution. To them we are just three unknown ships from a species they have never heard of. Jake nodded. The Vorans had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had always fought civilized species who followed the accepted rules of space combat. Humans had never been civilized. Alina, what did you think of the Zephyrians? Jake asked. Good people. Peaceful, intelligent, artistic. They remind me of what Earth might have been like if we had not had to fight for every day of our existence. Then we make sure they survive to keep being good people. Gentleman, lady, we are going to do something that has never been done before. We are going to beat a superior force through pure audacity. In the engineering section of the Liberty, Commander Steve Parker was making final preparations. His team had been working for hours modifying systems and preparing surprises for the enemy. Steve was a short, thick man with oil under his fingernails and a smile that meant trouble. How are we looking, Chief? Asked Sergeant Katie Walsh as she checked her Marine unit's equipment. We are as ready as we can be with what we have. The armor plating is reinforced. The weapons are loaded, and the engines will give us everything they have got when we need it. Katie nodded. She commanded 60 Marines, all volunteers who had signed up knowing they might never see Earth again. They were checking their weapons and armor, preparing for the possibility of boarding enemy ships. Think we can pull this off? Asked one of her corporals, a young man named Danny Mills. Danny, we are humans. We pulled ourselves up from caves and mud to travel between the stars. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that lasted centuries. 3 ships against 50. Katie shrugged. Sounds like a fair fight to me. The Marines laughed, but there was tension in their voices. They all knew the odds. They all knew that many of them would not survive the next few hours, but they also knew they were fighting for people who could not fight for themselves. 2 days later, the Voran fleet arrived at the edge of the Zephyrian system. General Thyros, the Voran commander, stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The Zephyrians had no military ships left. Their orbital defenses were minimal. This would be another easy conquest, adding another star system to the Vortan Empire. Sir, we are detecting 3 unknown vessels positioned between us and the planet, reported his tactical officer. Unknown. Show me. The main screen displayed 3 ships that looked like nothing Thyros had ever seen. They were angular and brutal, built for function rather than beauty. Heavy armor plating covered their hulls and weapon ports bristled along their sides. What species build ships like that? Thyros asked. Unknown. Sir, they are not in our database. They are broadcasting a message. Put it through. The screen changed to show a human face. Thyros had never seen anything like it. The creature had small eyes set deep in its skull, and its expression was hard and determined. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are ordered to leave this system immediately. The Zephyrians are under human protection. Thyros laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. Human protection? I have never heard of humans. You have. 3 ships, I have 52, leave now and I will let you live. Jake's expression did not change. General Thyrus, I assume we have studied your tactics. You prefer to crush your enemies through overwhelming force. You have never fought an enemy that welcomes being outnumbered. You are insane. No, General, we are human. There is a difference, but you are about to learn what it is. The transmission ended. Thyro stared at the blank screen, unsure what to make of the exchange. Orders, sir, asked his tactical officer. Destroy them, all ships, attack. Formation, show these humans what happens when you challenge the Voran Empire. The Voran fleet began moving forward, their ships spreading out to surround the 3 human vessels. It should have been over quickly, but as the first Voran ships came into weapons range, something unexpected happened. Instead of falling back trying to run, the human ships accelerated directly toward the enemy fleet. The Liberty, Defiance, and Retribution dove into the Vorthan formation like bullets fired from a gun. Their weapons began firing before anyone expected it, targeting the enemy ships with a precision that spoke of long experience in combat. What are they doing? Thyro shouted as his neat formation began to break apart. Humans were doing something no civilized species had ever attempted. They were turning a space battle into a close quarters brawl, forcing the larger Vorthon ships to fire at targets that moved unpredictably through their own formation. 2 Vorthon destroyers collided as they tried to avoid the Retribution's kamikaze charge. A cruiser's weapons array exploded when the Defiance ratted with precise fire while passing only meters away from its hull. For the first time in his career, General Thios was watching his superior force being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that maybe he had made a terrible mistake. The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and General Thyros could not believe what he was seeing. His tactical display showed chaos where there should have been order. Vorthan ships drifted in space, their hulls torn open by weapons that seemed primitive but devastatingly effective. Stat report, Thios demanded, his voice tight with frustration. 12 ships destroyed, 18 damaged. The humans have lost no vessels, though all 3 show heavy damage, his tactical officer replied, fear creeping into his voice. How is that possible? They are outnumbered 17 to 1 on the other side of the battle. Admiral Jake Morrison wiped blood from a cut on his forehead as the Liberty shook under enemy fire. The bridge was filled with smoke and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Half his crew was wounded, but they kept working. Damage report, Jake called out. Hull breaches on decks 5 and 7, main engines at 60%. Forward weapons array is offline, but we still have the port and starboard guns, reported Commander Alina Davis, her uniform torn and dirty. Good enough, Tony. Ben, how are you holding up? Captain Tony Martinez's voice crackled over the communication system. From the Defiance, we are still flying. Barely, lost our main reactor running on backup power, but we took out 3 of their cruisers in the last pass. Retribution here, came Captain Ben Rogers's voice, hull integrity at 30%. But our weapons are still online. Katie's Marines are ready for boarding. Actions if you need them, Jake smiled grimly. This was what humans did best. They took damage that would other species and kept fighting. They found ways to turn their injuries into advantages. All ships patterned 7. Let us show these Vorthans what happens when you back a human into a corner. The 3 human ships changed course, moving in a coordination that seemed impossible. Given their damage, they had practiced these maneuvers during their journey to Zapirian space, knowing they would need every advantage they could create. Dr. Amy Chin, the expedition's chief medical officer and xenobiologist, worked frantically in the Liberty's medical bay. She had been treating wounded crew members while simultaneously studying data about Voron biology and technology. Elena, I need to speak with you, Amy called through the communication system. Kind of busy right now, Doc, Elena replied as she coordinated the ship's defensive fire. This is important. I have been analyzing the Voron ship designs and crew psychology. They are not adapted for the kind of fighting we are doing. Amy paused to help a wounded engineer. Before continuing, their ships are built for long-range combat between organized fleets. Their crews are trained to follow orders and maintain formation. But we are fighting like pirates or raiders, using hit-and-run tactics in close quarters combat. So they're getting scared. Look at their formation. It is falling apart. Their commanders are making mistakes because they have never faced an enemy that fights like this. Elena glanced at her tactical display and realized Amy was right. The Voron ships were bunching together, trying to protect each other instead of maintaining their attack formations. They were fighting defensively, even though they still had the advantage in numbers. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Ashley Ford led her fighter squadron in a desperate attack against a Voron battleship. Her small craft looked like insects compared to the massive enemy vessel, but they moved with the agility that only human pilots could achieve. Blue Leader 2. Blue Squadron, target their sensor arrays, make them fight blind, Ashley commanded as she dove her fighter between the battleship's weapon turrets. The human fighters wove through a web of enemy fire, their pilots pushing their machines beyond safe limits, where other species would calculate acceptable risk levels. Humans simply accepted that they might die and focused on completing their mission. Blue 3 is hit, came voice over the radio. Engine failure. I'm going in. Ashley watched as Blue 3's fighter trailing fire and debris smashed into the battleship's bridge. The explosion was small compared to the size of the enemy ship, but it knocked out their primary command center. Good job, Blue 3. All remaining fighters, follow me. Let us give them something else to worry about. In the Retribution's Marine Bay, Sergeant Katie Walsh prepared her troops for what might be their final mission. The ship was badly damaged, its hull cracked in leaking atmosphere, but the Marines were calm, checking their weapons and equipment with the methodical precision of professional soldiers. Listen up, Katie said, her voice carrying clearly through the bay. The captain says we might get a chance to board one of their ships. If that happens, remember your training. These Vorthons are bigger than us and probably stronger, but they have never fought humans in close combat. Corporal Danny Mills raised his hand. Sergeant, what if we get separated? Then you keep fighting until you cannot fight anymore. You remember that back on Earth, our ancestors fought saber-tooth tigers with sharpened sticks. These Vorthons think they are scary, but they have never met a species that evolved from persistence. Hunters, the Marines nodded, their faces grim but determined. They understood what Katie was telling them. Humans had survived on Earth not because they were the strongest or fastest, but because they never gave up. When other predators got tired, humans kept hunting. When other species fled from danger, humans adapted and overcame. Back on the Vorthon flagship, General Thios was beginning to understand that he had made a serious error in judgment. These humans were not like any enemy he had ever faced. They seemed to get more dangerous as they took more damage. Sir, the humans are requesting communication, his communication officer reported. Put them through. Admiral Jake Morrison appeared on the screen, his face streaked with dirt and blood. Behind him, his bridge crew continued working despite obvious injuries and damage all around them. General, I want to make you an offer, Jake said calmly. You are hardly in a position to make offers, human. Your ships are falling apart. Jake smiled, and Thyros felt a chill run through him. It was not the smile of someone who was losing. General, you have been fighting us for 2 hours. In that time, you have lost 12 ships and damaged 18 more. We have lost 0 ships. Yes, we are damaged, but we are still fighting. In fact, we are just getting started. What is your point? My point is that you do not understand what you are fighting. You see 3 damaged ships and think you are winning, but what you are actually seeing is 3 ships full of humans who have decided that you need to be stopped, and humans, General, are very good at stopping things. Jake leaned forward, his expression growing serious. Here is my offer. Leave the system now and never come back. Go find some other species to bully, preferably one that has not evolved on a death world. And if I refuse, then you will learn why every other predator on Earth is either extinct or hiding from us. You will learn what happens when you threaten something a human has decided to protect. The transmission ended, leaving Thyros staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. But for the first time in his career, he was not sure what those orders should be. His tactical officer broke the silence. Sir, sensors show the human ships are moving again. They are forming up for another attack run. Thyros looked at his display. Half his fleet was damaged or destroyed, and the 3 human ships were still coming. They looked like they were held together by determination and spare parts, but they kept fighting with an intensity that defied all military logic. Sir, orders? The tactical officer asked. Again, Thyros realized that he was facing something completely outside his experience. These humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. They turned their weaknesses into strengths and their desperation into weapons. For the first time since becoming a general, Thyros was not sure he could win this battle, and that terrified him more than he was willing to admit. General Thyros made the decision that would change everything. Looking at his tactical display, seeing his fleet scattered and damaged by just 3 human ships, he chose to gamble everything on one final attack. All ships form up on my position. We attack the planet directly. If we cannot defeat these humans in space, we will force them to watch us destroy what they came to protect. The surviving Voran ships began moving toward the Zephyrian home world, leaving the 3 human vessels behind. It was a desperate move, but Thyros hoped it would force the humans to fight on his terms. Admiral Jake Morrison saw the Voran fleet changing Corson knew exactly what the enemy commander was thinking. On any other day with any other species it might have worked, but Jake had not come this far to watch innocent people die. All ships intercept course maximum speed. Jake ordered, "Sir, the engines cannot take much more." Commander Alina Davis warned, "We are already running beyond safe limits." "Then we run beyond unsafe limits too. We did not come here to be safe." The Liberty's engines roared as they pushed past their design specifications. In the engine room, Commander Steve Parker and his team worked frantically to keep the ship moving. Coolant leaked from damaged pipes in the reactor. Temperature climbed into the danger zone. "Steve, how long can we maintain this?" Alina's voice came through the communication system. "Maybe 10 minutes. Before everything melts down," Steve replied, sweat dripping from his face as he rerouted power systems manually. "But we will get you those 10 minutes. 3 human ships raced after the Voron fleet, their damaged hulls groaning under the stress. They were like wounded animals chasing a pack of predators, too hurt to survive but too determined to quit. Captain Tony Martinez on the Defiance was the first to reach firing range. His ship had lost most of its armor and half its weapons, but what remained still worked. He targeted the rear guard of the Vorthon fleet and opened fire. "This is Tony. I am engaging the enemy rear guard. My ship is falling apart, but I can still hurt them." 2 Voron destroyers turned to face him, their weapons lighting up space with deadly energy beams. The Defiance twisted and turned, avoiding some shots, but taking others on its weakened hull. "Tony, get out of there," Jake called out. "Negative, Admiral. These ships are not reaching that planet." The Defiance flew straight at the larger Vorthon ships, its guns firing continuously. Tony knew his ship could not survive much longer, so he decided to make every second count. Meanwhile, Captain Ben Rogers brought the Retribution alongside a Voron cruiser. The enemy ship was 3 times larger and had 10 times the firepower, but Ben had something the Vorthons did not understand. "Katie, this is Ben. I am putting you right next to their hull. You have maybe 30 seconds before they blow us apart." Sergeant Katie Walsh and her Marines had been waiting for this moment. As the Retribution scraped against the Voron cruiser's hull, her team used cutting torches to burn through the enemy ships. "Armor, move, move, move," Katie shouted as her Marines poured through the hole they had made. The Vorthons inside their ship had never faced human soldiers in close combat. The aliens were bigger and stronger, but the humans fought with a ferocity that shocked their enemies. Katie led her Marines through the ship's corridors, fighting toward the bridge. Corporal Danny Mills covered their advance, his weapon cutting down Voron soldiers who tried to stop them. He had been wounded twice, but he kept fighting because his squad was depending on him. "Sarge, which way to their command center?" Danny asked as they reached a junction up 2 levels. "Then forward," Katie replied, checking her tactical display. "But we have got company coming from behind." The Marines split up, some continuing toward the bridge while others stayed to hold the corridor. It was exactly the kind of impossible situation that humans somehow found ways to win. Dr. Amy Chen, still treating wounded on the Liberty, was also monitoring the battle through the ship's sensors. What she saw gave her an idea that was either brilliant or insane. "Admir, I need to talk to you," Amy called out. "Doctor, I am a little Busy right now, Jake replied as he maneuvered his ship between two Voran battleships. Jake, listen to me, I have been studying their fleet movements. The Vorans are not just running toward the planet, they're forming up for an orbital bombardment. They plan to destroy the entire surface from space. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Orbital bombardment would kill every living thing on the planet below. Millions of innocent Zahirians would die in minutes. How long do we have? Maybe 20 minutes. Before they reach optimal firing position. Jake looked around his damaged bridge. His ship was barely holding together. The Defiance was under heavy attack and might not survive another 5 minutes. The Retribution was locked in boarding combat with an enemy cruiser. Amy, do you have any brilliant ideas? Because right now I am open to suggestions. Actually, I do, but you are not going to like it. Amy's plan was simple and terrifying. The Liberty would ram the Voran flagship at maximum speed. Impact would destroy both ships, but it would also disrupt the enemy fleet coordination long enough for help to arrive. Help? Jake asked. What help? We are the only humans in this sector. The Zephyrians have been monitoring our radio communications. They heard how we fight, how we think, how we never give up. Jake, they are coming. Every civilian ship they can put into space is heading this way. They may not have weapons, but they have courage. Now we taught them that. Jake stared at the tactical display. Ramming attack would mean certain death for everyone on the Liberty, but it might save millions of lives on the planet below. Elena set a collision course for the Voran flagship. Jake ordered quietly. Sir, that will destroy us too. I know. Do it anyway. Around the bridge, Jake's crew began preparing for their final mission. They secured equipment, sent last messages to loved ones back on Earth, and made peace with their decision. Commander Steve Parker sealed the engine room and pushed the reactor to its absolute limit. Admiral, you will have full power for the ram. After that, well, after that it will not matter. Lieutenant Ashley Ford and her remaining fighters formed up around the Liberty, ready to escort their flagship on its final flight. Blue Squadron standing by. Admiral, it has been an honor serving with you on the Zephyrian home world. Ambassador Kelline watched the tactical display in horror. He could see what the humans were planning to do. They are going to sacrifice themselves for us, he whispered. Around him, other Zephyrians watched the 3 human ships fighting desperately against impossible odds. These aliens from the Death World had come to save people they had never met, and now they were willing to die for them. Sir, the civilian fleet is approaching the battle zone, reported. Lieutenant Thane Kelvin looked at the display and saw dozens of Zahirian ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels, research ships. None of them were built for war, but they were coming anyway. Open a channel to the human admiral, Kelline ordered. Jake's face appeared on the screen, streaked with blood and dirt, but still determined. Admiral Morrison, our ships are coming. We cannot fight like you do, but we can help. Jake smiled for the first time in hours. Ambassador, tell your people to stay back. This is going to get very dangerous very quickly. With respect. Admiral, you taught us something today. You taught us that sometimes good people have to fight even when they are not soldiers. We may not be warriors like you, but we are not going to hide while you die for us. The Liberty began its final acceleration toward the Vorthon flagship. General Thero saw them coming. and realized what they intended to do. For the first time in his life, he felt genuine fear. These humans were willing to die to stop him, not for glory or conquest, but simply because it was the right thing to do. As the Liberty grew larger on his view screen, Thyros finally understood what he was fighting against. He was fighting a species that had never learned how to quit. The Liberty screamed through space toward the Voran flagship, her hull glowing red from the heat of maximum acceleration. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the enemy ship grow larger on the view screen. In 30 seconds, both ships would be destroyed. All hands brace for impact, Jake announced calmly. But something unexpected happened. General Thyros, seeing certain death approaching, did something no Vorthan commander had ever done before. He opened a communication channel to all ships in his fleet. All vessels, this is General Thyros. I am ordering a full retreat. Repeat, full retreat. Leave this system immediately. His tactical officer stared at him in shock. Sir, we still outnumber them. We can still win. Thyros looked at the human ship racing toward him, its crew willing to die just to stop his attack on innocent civilians. No, we cannot win, not against this, General Thyros. This is Admiral Morrison. Jake's voice came through the communication system. Are you surrendering? I am calling a retreat. My fleet will leave this system and never return. You have my word. Jake felt the tension leave his shoulders around him. His crew began shutting down the ramming sequence. The Liberty's engines powered down just in time to prevent a collision. Elena, bring us about. Let us make sure they actually leave. Surviving Voran ships began turning away from the planet, their formation broken and demoralized. For the first time in their military history, they were retreating from a smaller force. On the Retribution, Sergeant Katie Walsh and her Marines had fought their way to the bridge of the Vorthon cruiser. The enemy crew surrendered rather than face more close combat with the humans. Katie looked around at her wounded Marines, proud of what they had accomplished. Corporal Mills, how many casualties? She asked. 12 wounded, 3 serious. But we took the ship, Sergeant. Katie nodded. They had proven that humans could fight fourth hand to hand and win. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget. Captain Tony Martinez managed to keep the Defiance flying long enough to see the Vorthans retreat. His ship was barely held together, but his crew had performed miracles. They had faced impossible odds and survived. Tony, this is Jake's status report. We are alive, Admiral. Barely, but we are alive, and the Vorthans are running away. As the Vorthon fleet jumped away into hyperspace, the Zaffiran civilian ships arrived in the battle zone. Cargo haulers and passenger liners moved carefully between the floating debris, looking for survivors and offering aid to the damaged human ships. Ambassador Kelvin's voice came over the communication system. Admiral Morrison, our medical ships are standing by to help your wounded. Our repair vessels are ready to assist with your ships. Jake looked around his bridge at his injured crew and damaged equipment. We accept your offer, Ambassador, and thank you. Dr. Amy Chen worked alongside Zapperian medical staff to treat the wounded from all 3 human ships. Aliens were amazed by how quickly humans healed and how little they complained about their injuries. Your species is remarkable, said Dr. Velen, the chief Zapperian physician. These injuries would disable our people for months, but your soldiers are already asking when they can return to duty. Amy smiled as she bandaged a Marine's arm. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to be tough, Commander. Steve Parker supervised the repairs to the Liberty with help from Zapirian engineers. The aliens were fascinated by human ship design, which seemed to prioritize function and durability over elegance. Your engine should have exploded hours ago, observed Chief Engineer Telvin. The stress readings were far beyond safe limits. Steve wiped grease from his hands and grinned. Safe limits are more like suggestions. Where we come from, we build things to work even when they should not work. 3 days later, the human fleet was ready to depart. The ships had been repaired as much as possible, though they still bore the scars of battle. The crews had rested and honored their fallen comrades. In the Zephyrian council chamber, Ambassador Kelvin stood before a gathering of his people and the human officers. The room was filled with representatives from across the Zephyrian worlds, all wanting to see the humans who had saved them. Admiral Morrison, Captain Martinez, Captain Rogers, and all your brave crews, Kelling began. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You came to help people you had never met, fought enemies you had never faced, and risked everything for strangers. Jake stood and addressed the assembly. Ambassador, we did not come here for payment or glory. We came because someone needed help, and we were able to help. That is what civilized beings do for each other. But surely there is something we can offer you. Technology, resources, territory. Jake shook his head. We need nothing except your promise to stay safe and continue being the good people you are. The galaxy needs more species like yours. Young Zephyrian in the audience stood up. Admiral, what if we want to be more like you? What if we want to learn to defend ourselves and help others? Jake smiled. Then we will teach you not how to fight, but how to stand up for what is right, how to help those who cannot help themselves, how to never give up when good people are in danger. As the human fleet prepared to leave, news of the battle had already begun spreading across the galaxy. Other species heard the story of 3 ships defeating a massive Vorthan fleet. They learned about humans, the species from the Death World who fought not for conquest but for justice. On distant worlds, other oppressed peoples began sending messages into space, hoping that somewhere among the stars humans might hear their calls for help. General Thios returned to Vorthon space, a changed being. He had faced an enemy that could not be defeated by superior numbers or advanced technology. The humans had shown him something he had never believed possible, that sometimes being willing to sacrifice everything was more powerful than any weapon. He ordered his fleets to avoid human space and to seek out other targets. The Vorhian Empire would continue its expansion, but they would never again underestimate the small species from the Death World. Dr. Paul Jackson, the Liberty's chief psychologist, spent the journey home interviewing crew members about their experiences. He was preparing a report for Earth Command about what they had learned. What impressed you most about the Zephyrians? He asked Lieutenant Ashley Ford. They reminded me why we do this. She replied, they showed me what we are fighting to protect, not just lives but the idea that good people should be free to live in peace. And what did you learn? About ourselves. Ashley was quiet for a moment. I learned that humans are not just survivors, we are protectors. When we see innocence threatened, something deep inside us says no, not on our watch, and we will pay any price to keep that promise. The liberty, defiance, and retribution jumped toward home, leaving behind a star system that would never forget them. The Zapparians had been saved, but more importantly, they had been inspired. They began building their own defense forces, not to conquer others, but to protect themselves and help their neighbors. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in his quarters, looking out at the stars through a damaged porthole. Somewhere out there, other people needed help. Other bullies thought they could prey on the weak without consequence. But now the galaxy knew about humans. They knew that there was a species willing to travel across space to fight. For strangers, they knew that calls for help would be answered, no matter how dangerous or hopeless the situation seemed. Alina entered his quarters with a new batch of messages from Earth. Command, more distress calls were coming in. More innocent people needed protection from those who would harm them. Ready for another mission, Admiral? She asked. Jake smiled and looked back at the stars. Alina, we are human. We are always ready to help someone who needs it. That is what we do. The Liberty and her sister ships continued their journey home, but they all knew it would not be long before they were needed again. The galaxy had learned that when good people called for aid, the Deathworlders would answer.